Hey guys, tonight we begin with the surprisingly well-documented and often wildly misunderstood daily life of Roman prostitutes. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see how far this sleepy little time machine reaches. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's begin with your new life. You wake up, if you can call it that, in a space barely large enough to stretch. Not a room, not really. More like a rumour of space, carved between damp stone walls and someone else's leftover sighs. Congratulations, you now live in ancient Rome, and your apartment is also your office, also your bed, also your cage. Your mattress is made of straw and denial. Your ceiling is a cracked arch where water drips when it rains. There's no window, no door, just a curtain that flutters when someone passes, like it's pretending to be privacy. The air smells like smoke, cheap perfume, and decisions you didn't get to make. And your belongings, what little you ever as tired of being here as you are. This is your work-from-home setup. If home was a whole, and work never ended, you'd like to think there's a routine to cleanliness, a rhythm. First the water, then the soap, maybe a clean towel to end the ritual with dignity. But this is ancient Rome, and here, hygiene is less a ritual and more a desperate improv skit. You live in a city of marble. Yes, but the scent in the air isn't carved stone and laurel. It's something more primal. A blend of fish sauce, body odour, street dust, and the faint optimism of goat urine. The Roman nose, so revered in sculpture, had to be tough. It had no choice. So when it's time for your daily wash, you don't reach for a faucet. There are none. Plumbing exists only in the homes of senators and the temples of gods. You, on the other hand, reach for something far more democratic, the public fountain, a place where pigeons, philosophers, and prostitutes all gather to splash away yesterday's regrets. You tie up your tunic, approach the fountain, and pray quietly that no one is rinsing poultry in it this morning. It's happened before. A chicken flaps out, soaked but somehow angrier than when it went in. You pretend you didn't see it. The water is cold, always cold. No temperature control here, unless you count the sun and your threshold for discomfort. You scoop it up, splash it across your face, your underarms, maybe behind the knees if you're feeling luxurious. There's no soap, but if you've managed to scrape together a few coins lately, you might have a small pinch of Natronin abrasive white powder made from dried lake salts. The Romans called it cleansing, or you call it sandpaper for sinners. You rub it into your skin, and it bites back. Every scrape is a reminder that cleanliness here isn't soothing. It's a performance, a ritual of pain that leaves you red, raw, and stinging like penance for surviving too many clients this week. And then there's the smell. Perfume is your salvation. The cheap kind. The kind that comes in ceramic jars and burns the nostrils a little. You dab it behind your ears, on your wrists, under your breasts. Not because it smells good. It doesn't, but it smells better than the man 3 customers ago, one who reeked of garum and ambition. Sometimes, if you've been tipped well, you skip the fountain altogether and treat yourself to the ultimate Roman luxury, a visit to the public baths. The bathhouse. Equal parts cleansing, gossip, and bacterial warfare. You step inside, and the humidity slaps you like an overfamiliar senator. The walls are damp. The air is thick. You undress, tuck your possessions into a cubbyhole you absolutely do not trust, and pray again this time that your sandals are still there when you get out. The first room is the tepidarium, the warm room. You sit, you sweat. Everyone sweats. Beside you, a merchant discusses grain prices. A soldier rubs oil into his chest hair like he's preparing for war. A poet is talking loudly about his latest metaphor for death. You consider drowning yourself just to get it over with. Next is the caldarium, the hot room. Here, the steam blinds you and the tiles scald your feet. You pretend it's relaxing, but in truth, you're just trying not to slip on someone's toenail. This is where you scrape. You take out your stridular curved metal blade and drag it across your oiled skin, pulling up sweat, dirt, flakes of makeup, and doubt. It's the Roman version of a loofah, except more violent. When you're done, your skin feels smoother, but also confused about why it just went through all that. You rinse off in lukewarm water, step into a drafty corner, and begin the final phase of the ritual rebuilding the mask. You powder your face with chalk-based dust not to glow, but to hide the circles under your eyes. You add a smear of rouge to the cheeks, a line of kohl around the eyes, not because it's beautiful, but because mystery sells. Men don't want to know you've already endured 5 of them today. They want fantasy, and fantasy has no eye bags. Your breath. You rinse with wine. Yes, wine. You swish it, spit it, and briefly pretend you're a high priestess instead of someone about to reapply perfume for the 4th time that morning. There's no toothbrush, no mint, just wine and willpower. Back outside, you towel off with cloth that smells faintly of mildew. Apply another round of scent, this one floral, almost medicinal, and step back into your sandals. They're wet. Of course they're wet. And as you make your way toward the brothel, or the tavern, or the street corner you've claimed as your own, you know one thing for sure: you're clean. Or at least, you look clean. And in Rome, that's all that matters. You'd like to believe that getting dressed is a matter of personal style, a way to express who you are. But in ancient Rome, your clothes don't say who you are. They say what you're allowed to be. And if you're a woman in this line of work, what you're allowed to be is available. Not mysterious, not dignified, just available. The law says so, quite literally. You don't get to wear the stola, that long, graceful, layered dress reserved for the matronae, the respectable married women of Roman society. The stola is quiet, draped, modest. It whispers, "I belong to a husband, and I bake my own bread." You wear the toga. Yes, that toga. The one you probably associate with senators, philosophers, Caesar holding court with grapes in one hand and a speech in the other. That long swirl of wool, once sacred to Roman masculinity, was by the turn of the 1st century reassigned to another class entirely. Women like you, the female toga, shorter, tighter, flashier, less dignified and more declarative, less statesman, more street sign. Wearing it wasn't a choice. It was mandated by law. Rome, in all its marble-plated hypocrisy, had a very clear dress code. Respectable women wear this. Unrespectable women wear that. No confusion. No room for subtlety. No wiggle room. So every morning, you slip into a garment that shouts your shame before you even open your mouth. The fabric itself isn't the problem. Sometimes it's soft. Sometimes it's dyed in bright, cheerful colours: red, orange, even deep blue if you're feeling dangerous. You might pair it with cheap jewellery, copper earrings, fake emeralds, glass beads from the market stalls, something loud, something glittery, something designed not to flatter but to announce. Visibility is the only currency you control. You want to be seen, not as a woman, not as a person, but as an option. Your shoes, if you have them, are sandals worn thin, straps fraying, soles uneven from the city's cobbled streets, or maybe you go barefoot, not out of rebellion or aesthetic, but because leather costs more than rent, and a client rarely tips extra just because your feet were presentable. Hair, you curl it if you can. Maybe you have a blonde wig imported from Gaul, if you've got connections. Blonde hair has a strange power in Rome. It's exotic, erotic, and clearly not native. Just foreign enough to be fascinating, just artificial enough to be suspicious. So you pin it high, smear it with oil, and pray it doesn't slip halfway through a conversation with a senator who claims to be here for research. And then comes the mirror. It's not made of silver, or even glass. It's bronze cloudy, dented, warped by time and fingers. But you use it anyway. You smile into it. A half smile. The kind you practice not because it works, but because pretending makes it easier to bear. The girl in the mirror isn't proud. She isn't even trying to be beautiful. She's trying to look worth it. The irony, of course, is that the more effort you put into looking desirable, the more contempt you invite. Walk down the street in your bright toga, kohl-lined eyes, and jingling earrings, and you'll see the stares. Not from clients, from matrons, from mothers dragging their sons, from old women who haven't touched their husbands in years. They don't hate you because you're vulgar. They hate you because you remind them that virtue is just another costume, one they can afford to wear. And the worst part, you can't tone it down. You're not allowed to dress modestly. You're not permitted to pass for someone you're not. If you tried to wear a stole, if you dared to dress like a respectable woman, You could be fined, imprisoned, even branded for impersonation. That's right. Dressing above your station is a punishable offence. So instead, you wear the shame they gave you, in bright cloth, in coloured thread, in metal that turns your skin green. And it works. It tells everyone exactly what they need to know about you. That you don't belong to a man, that you're not under his protection, that your body is part of the city's economy, that you're alone. But somehow, even in this, there's an artistry to it, a strange kind of resistance. You dress the way they expect, and then you outperform expectation. Your colour is brighter, your walk is bolder, your makeup is sharper than the senator's dagger. You turn their uniform of disgrace into your own twisted kind of armour. Because if the game is rigged, you might as well look good losing. Still, some mornings, it hits you different. The weight of it. The absurdity of needing to look scandalous just to make rent. The fact that you are forbidden to blend in, forbidden to hide, forbidden to be mistaken for someone with a father or a dowry or a place at the temple. And as you pull the toga over your shoulders and adjust the fall of the fabric just so, you catch yourself thinking, not for the first time, how strange it is that in this city of rules and rituals, the most visible women are the ones no one truly sees. You wear the costume, you wear the shame, but you don't wear it for you. You wear it so someone else, someone in need, someone in power, someone in pain can buy the illusion of control for 15 minutes. And Rome calls that commerce. There's a moment, just after you've washed, when your face is bare, not clean, not glowing, just bare. You catch your reflection in the dented bronze mirror, and for a heartbeat, you see the truth: a woman who hasn't slept properly in 3 nights, whose back aches from bending, whose knees are red from stone floors, whose eyes, well, best not to describe the eyes. But that moment vanishes quickly, because now it's time to put on your face, and not the one the gods gave you, the one the city expects. You start with the powder. It's not soft or silky. Not a puff of luxury like the noblewomen have. Yours is chalk-based, bone-white, made from crushed minerals and whatever powder the vendor swore was exotic. It clings to your cheeks like regret. You pat it on carefully, hoping to even the tone, blur the bruises, dull the fatigue. But no matter how much you apply, it never covers the way you slept folded in half like laundry, curled beside a bucket, with one eye open for rats or customers. Still, you keep pressing. You tell yourself it's not to look younger or happier, it's to look awake. You dab rouge onto your cheeks bright red, almost clownish if you're not careful. A little goes a long way, but too little, and you look like a corpse with opinions. You know the difference. You've seen both. Your rouge is not decoration, it's war paint. Not because you're trying to seduce. Not anymore. That's a rookie mistake, thinking men want real seduction. What they want is the illusion of it, the performance, the sparkle of a woman who could be enchanted, if only he were worth it. So you paint yourself like a stage actress before a bad play on you've performed too many times, in too many cities, for too many bored emperors with soft hands and hard eyes. Next comes the eyes, coal, thick, black, made from crushed antimony or charcoal mixed with oil. It smells faintly of metal and ritual. You trace it around your eyes carefully, trying to lift the corners just enough to fake alertness, because nothing says ready for the day like pretending you haven't already served 3 senators and a soldier since sunrise. You drag the line slowly, deliberately, like you're outlining the border between yourself and the person you become on the clock. The coal hides puffiness, disguises your exhaustion, blurs the memory of tears you told yourself you didn't have time to shed. You look up into the mirror, it's working. You're starting to look like her again, the version of you who laughs at bad jokes, who tilts her head just so, who bites her lip in time with the clink of coins. That woman never existed. But you invented her, and now she pays the bills. Then, the lips. Red. Always red. Not a natural flush, but a statement. The kind of red that says, yes, I'm here. No, you don't get to look away. Some women use crushed berries. Others, powdered ochre mixed with oil. You've used both, and a few more things you'd rather not name. It goes on uneven. You fix it with a fingertip. No one's looking that closely. Anyway, they're not here for precision. They're here for permission to want, to touch, to forget. The perfume comes last. It's the only luxury you allow yourself. And even then, it's not real luxury. Just strong. strong enough to drown out the smells that cling to you: sweat, smoke, sour wine, old breath, other people's choices. You dab it at the throat, behind the ears, into the crease of your elbows. It stings a little, probably too much alcohol in it, or vinegar, or snake oil. You stopped asking what was in it when the answers got too poetic. Still, it does its job. It smells like confidence, like distance, like something far better than you actually feel. And that's the whole point. Isn't it this routine, the powder, the rouge, the kohl, the scent? It's not about beauty, not really. It's not about attracting, it's about disguising. Every layer hides something: the fatigue, the hunger, the bruises, the nights you didn't eat, the mornings you woke up with someone else's name in your mouth. Every line you draw is a boundary, every colour a distraction. You used to think it was deception, but now you know better. It's survival. You glance again at your reflection. She looks ready. That version of you, the one in the mirror, isn't tired. She isn't angry. She isn't wondering how many more years she can do this. She looks mysterious, composed, playful. She's got it all under control, she's you, after the pain's been powdered over. And for a few hours today, that'll be enough, until the rouge fades, until the eyeliner smears, until the perfume wears off, and your real scent, salt and sadness, begins to rise again from under the silk. But that comes later. Right now, you look fine, and looking fine is half the job. You probably think marketing is a modern invention. Logos, slogans, catchy jingles, SEO hacks, maybe a billboard with a smiling dentist offering 2-for-1 cleanings. But if you lived in ancient Rome, and your job was selling yourself literally, you learned very quickly that visibility wasn't a luxury, it was survival. And your first lesson: yelling is branding. You stand in a doorway near the bathhouse, toga cinched just a little tighter than Roman decency recommends, hair oiled and curled, rouge still holding from this morning's battle with the mirror. The foot traffic is strong, men drifting out of steam rooms, tipsy from lunchtime wine, flushed from a day's heat or boredom or self-importance. You call out, not just hello, not how are you. Sir, no one here has time for pleasantries. You offer specials. You compliment sandals. You raise one eyebrow and suggest that, for 2 denarii, you might be convinced to fake surprise. This is Rome, the world's greatest empire. But here in this little corner of Suburra, you are the CEO of your own crumbling storefront, and you are in customer acquisition mode. Your competitors standing 6 feet to your left and right, also shouting, also adjusting their necklines, one's pretending to stretch, another's pretending to pray, all of you circling the same pond, fishing for the same distracted senators and sailors. So you sharpen your pitch, you invent a new wink, you hum a little, you add flair to your voice, a purr, a growl, a laugh that sounds unrehearsed but took you 3 weeks to master. Your throat gets sore, your ego bruises hourly, but you land one. A sweaty grain merchant with soft hands and a coin purse that jingles louder than his conscience. You lead him inside, 1 down, 8 to go, and when he leaves, you offer him something more than a smile. You offer him a pen, not for poetry, for promotion. Because in ancient Rome, the best marketers aren't just loud, they're written about. You guide him to the back wall of your establishment stone plaster, rough to the touch, and you gesture. Somewhere between graffiti and gravestone, this is your LinkedIn profile, your comment section, your brand story, carved in Latin and misspelled praise. He scratches his name beside the others. Felicia was fast, Thais divine, Cassia, worth every coin, and then some. You never met Cassia, but you thank her silently for raising the bar. Some men draw images, crude outlines of body parts with proportions that defy both biology and modesty. Others scrawl reviews, half poetic, half drunk, all permanent. This isn't vandalism, it's visibility. And in this game, visibility beats virtue every time. Respectable women don't advertise. They don't need to. They don't stand on corners or lean through doorways or whisper flirtation through toothless smiles. They're hidden behind curtains, behind names, behind fathers and husbands and marble porticos. You're your own business card, and the goal isn't elegance. The goal is recognition. One day, a regular stumbles past. He squints. He sees your name. He remembers your scent. He grins, snaps his fingers, and in that moment you've retargeted him. conversion complete. Sometimes, if you have extra coin, you pay a graffiti artista drunk with steady hands to etch your tagline in the best location's temple steps, bathhouse walls, tavern arches, somewhere men will see your name just before they make a decision they'll pretend to regret. Livia, gentle as silk. Marcia, don't tell your wife. Pompeia half-price Thursdays. If a rival gets popular, you might pay someone to write over her inscription. This is Rome. There are no rules, only revisions. And if you're really clever, you build a niche. Maybe you're the one who sings softly during the act. Maybe you recite Ovid's verses while disrobing. Maybe you remember birthdays. Maybe you don't talk at all and men thank you for it. Whatever works. Because here's the truth. You don't get to decide what men want. You only get to decide whether or not they remember you. And if they remember you, they return. And if they return, you eat. Marketing in your world is not about selling desire. It's about positioning yourself as preferable misery. Every night, you walk home past walls full of carved names, yours among them, sometimes high, sometimes crossed out, sometimes underlined by someone who really meant it. You glance at them and think not with pride, not with shame, but with strategy. Did it work? Did he come back? Will someone else? The paint fades, the plaster cracks, the letters weather under rain and gossip, but you keep showing up, keep shouting, keep painting your face and painting the air with promises you no longer believe in, because that's the job. You are the sign, you are the storefront, you are the product, the brand, and the very thin marketing budget all rolled into one. And in ancient Rome, there's no A-B testing, only A. Always A. You, until one day, someone else is standing in your spot, wearing your smile, using your old lines, and she's louder than you. You walk past the wall again, and your name is still there, still etched, but now smaller, fainter, a little lower than before. You pause, you look up, and you yell louder. In modern cities, where you work says something about who you are. Corner office, remote from a cabin, caff with free Wi-Fi and oat milk. But in ancient Rome, your workplace doesn't say who you are. It says who owns you, and how loud they want that ownership to sound. You don't have an address. You have a location of tolerance, a place the city permits you to exist. So long as you don't exist too well. There might be a brothel, might be a tavern, might be a street corner where the shadows are just deep enough for plausible deniability. Each place has its charm, and each is a reminder that you didn't choose any of them. The brothel is where it all starts for most women. They call it the Lupinatha Den of Wolves. She-wolves, to be exact. Not noble, wild wolves. No, that's poetic. This is the Roman version, mangy, cornered, sharp-toothed because survival demands it. The building is usually 2 stories, crammed between a bathhouse and a tavern, convenient for men who stumble out of one and into you. Inside, a narrow hallway runs through the middle like a spine, lined on either side with doors that aren't really doors, just curtains, threadbare and unwilling, no locks, no privacy, only the thin hope that whoever walks in tonight is too drunk to talk much. Your room is the size of a pantry, a stone bed carved into the wall, a mattress that might once have been straw, now just damp cloth and resignation, a lamp, if the Leno remembered to refill it, a bucket, don't ask what it's for. You hear everything. The woman in the next room crying, the client outside negotiating your worth like he's buying grapes, the brothel keeper, the Leno shouting down the hallway about some senator who wants someone younger. There's always someone younger. The Leno doesn't manage you. He doesn't protect you. He owns the space you breathe in, and he rents it back to you by the hour. Some Lenones take half your pay, some take all of it. In return, they give you 4 walls and the illusion of a workplace. There are no breaks, no benefits, no holidays. No one checks in on your mental health. The only retirement plan is death, or promotion to madam if you live long enough to start shouting at the next generation. You learn to move efficiently, to clean quickly, to fake interest with a speed that would impress any client-facing consultant today. But after a few years, the brothel walls start to feel like they're leaning in, not collapsing, just closing. Then there's the tavern. If the brothel is a cubicle with a curtain, the tavern is an open-plan startup where everyone is drunk and no one understands boundaries. You serve wine, you flirt, you dodge, you balance a tray in one hand and your dignity in the other, and most nights you drop both. The smell is unforgettable. Rotting cabbage, Spilled vinegar, a mix of fish sauce and sweat so strong, it feels physical. Here, you're not expected to close a deal. You're expected to linger, to make men believe they're interesting, to laugh at their stories, even the ones you've heard from 3 other men that same afternoon. Some taverns have upstairs rooms. If you're lucky, that's where you work. If you're unlucky, it's where you live. Tavern clients are impulsive, less predictable than brothel clients, more likely to pick a fight, more likely to try and pay in IOUs, old bread, or songs they swear were written just for you. And if they don't pay, you hope the bouncer is sober enough to care. But sometimes you prefer the tavern, because at least you're visible. At least you're out in the open, where someone might notice if things go wrong. Visibility becomes its own kind of shield, and if you're really clever, you use that to negotiate. Maybe you upsell a drink. Maybe you drop a whisper that sends a wealthier man to your corner. Maybe, for a second, it almost feels like you're in control. You're not. But almost is good enough for now. Then there's the street. Prostibule. The freelancers. The rogues. The desperate and the proud. You walk the alleys. The forums. The bathhouse steps anywhere a man with coins and loneliness might pass. To some, this feels like freedom. No Leno. No tavern boss. No rent due to a room you hate. You choose your hours. You keep your earnings. But the truth is, freedom in Rome is like a cracked bowl hollow, fragile, and barely able to hold anything at all. You're your own lookout, your own bouncer, your own lawyer when the aediles come sniffing for violations. You bribe, you run, you smile when you'd rather scream. There are no curtains here, no walls to lean on, just the open air and the chance that tonight you'll find someone who isn't too drunk, too cruel, or too afraid of his wife to follow through. You wear your best colours, you shout like the girls at the brothel, you memorise the temple steps and the streets with the best shadows. You have a knife in your sleeve and a prayer on your tongue, and if something goes wrong there is no one to call, no Leno, no madam, no bouncer with one eye and a debt to settle, just you, and the road, and the Romans pretending they didn't see anything. So where do you work? Where can you work? That depends. Do you want walls or risk? Do you want protection that costs everything or danger that gives you nothing? In this city, there are no good options, just different shapes of being owned. And whichever one you choose, if you even get to choose, it becomes your whole world, your scent, your sleep schedule, your clientele, your future. Because in ancient Rome, location isn't identity, it's a measurement of how tightly the leash is tied. And some nights, as you clean yourself with cold water in a borrowed alley, or wipe blood off a curtain in a room with no door, or fake laughter behind a counter that smells like boiled beans and betrayal, you wonder, if no one owns you, why does the whole city act like it still does? In most jobs, you set your price based on skill, labour, maybe experience. You charge by the hour. You negotiate contracts. You raise your rate when you gain confidence or grey hair. But in your line of work, it's not about how good you are. It's about what someone will pay before they lose interest. And in Rome, interest is cheap. Let's start at the bottom. The standard rate at the lowest end of the spectrum, a back alley. Unlicensed, half-sober encounter with a man who smells like spoiled lentils and unresolved trauma is 1 coin. A single as bronze, small, worth less than a bowl of barley porridge at the market. For 1 coin, he expects 2 minutes. For 2 minutes, he expects all of you. And when it's over, you don't get a thank you. You get your coin, maybe, if he remembers, if he doesn't run, if no one interrupts, if he doesn't suddenly decide that you weren't worth even that. You hold that coin in your palm, still warm from his hand, and you think this is what dignity costs. Or rather, what it doesn't. Of course, not all clients are bottom feeders. Some dress better, speak better, carry themselves like they're philosophers or minor nobility. But even those men don't pay more because they respect you. They pay more because they want to pretend they're not like the others. They want the experience. They want the illusion of class, candles, conversation, maybe some poetry. They ask questions like, do you enjoy your work, or what do you think of Cicero's speeches while slowly unlacing their sandals? That tier of customer pays in denarii, silver, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. If they like you, if you flatter them just right, if you laugh at the appropriate time or say something clever about Jupiter's favourite constellation, they're not there for just sex. They're there for a performance. And you become the luxury brand. You adjust your voice. You use bigger words. You offer wine you can't afford to drink yourself. You smile when they ask you what your real name is, and you lie as gracefully as your training allows. The irony is thick the more they pay, the more you disappear. Because the richer the client, the less they want to know who you actually are. They want a persona, a fade, a mirror that reflects their fantasy. And you're happy to be that mirror, so long as they leave the silver behind. Then there's the middle tier, the men who come regularly. Who know your name, the fake one. Who say things like the usual as if they're ordering bread. These are the ones who ask for a discount, not because they're poor, but because they think familiarity is a form of ownership. I was here yesterday, they remind you, as if that entitles them to a loyalty program. You look at them, smile, and decide, based on a simple formula, how bad do they smell. If it's wine, you can deal. If it's fish sauce, it's full price. If it's arrogance and garlic, double. If they bring a gift bread, cheap perfume. A stolen flower, you might nod and shave a coin off. You make up the rules as you go, because that's the only power you have left. But even in this dance of discounts and pretend affections, you know the truth. The price isn't money, it's belief. The man pays to believe he's wanted. You charge to pretend it's true. Sometimes, you wonder what it would feel like to be worth more than a meal. To be paid not for the way you move or moan, but for the way you endure. But Rome has no market for that. Then there are the women working under lens, the pimps, the madams, the leeches in linen robes. You might earn 2 denarii but see only half a coin. The rest vanishes, toward rent, toward bath fees, toward the lamp oil that you weren't allowed to let burn past midnight. Some women are enslaved, and they don't get paid at all. Just food, just a place to sleep, just promises. Work hard enough, they're told, and maybe one day you'll buy your freedom. That's the Roman version of a pension plan. Work until your body fails, your value drops, and your last coin goes to a god who never answered anyway. Still, you smile. Still, you show up. Still, you learn to negotiate without ever being taught. Because in this economy, your body is both the storefront and the transaction. There's no refund policy, and no one reads the fine print. Sometimes a client offers more, a bracelet, a favour, a promise of protection, a job cleaning his cousin's villa, a letter to a patron who might elevate you to cortesanthi rarefied air where men pretend you're a muse instead of a necessity. You take the gift. You smile again. But you don't believe. Because for every woman who made it out, there are hundreds who disappeared into corners no one mapped. Your price is a number hell forget by morning. But it's the number you'll count again before sleeping, in your hand, in your head. A number that says you still matter enough to be bought, which in Rome is the only kind of mattering that counts. Of all the men who knock on your door, none are quite as absurd or as efficient as the Roman tax collector. Clients come and go. Some leave coins, some leave bruises, some leave nothing but apologies and smells that linger for days. But the taxman he always takes. Not your affection, not your time, just your money and your official acknowledgement that you exist as a taxable asset. Rome, ever the innovator, had a special name for it. Vectigal ex capture as the tax on what you earn with your body. It wasn't hidden, wasn't secret. It was a government-approved toll for your existence in the marketplace of desire. Yes, your shame was state-sanctioned. And yes, you paid it. Because if you didn't, they'd find you. The man who collects the fee is called the publicanus. He's not charming. He doesn't smile. He's not here for pleasure, and definitely not for poetry. He arrives with a wax tablet, a stylus, and the solemn look of someone who takes pride in counting how many of you there are. Sometimes he smells like rose oil. Sometimes he smells like vinegar and policy. Either way, he flips open his ledger and asks, "Name you give the one he knows." Not the real one. Just the name on the registry. The name you were forced to adopt the day you were legally entered into the books as a professional courtesan. Because in Rome, you don't just pay taxes, you register. You walk into the office of the aedile, a city official who oversees cleanliness, building codes, and the moral behaviour of the Macesso, of course. Managing brothels falls under his noble jurisdiction. He looks you over. Maybe he nods. Maybe he scribbles. Maybe he asks how long you've been working. how many clients you see, whether you've caused any public disturbance with your perfume or your personality. Then he brands you. Literally. Sometimes it's a tattoo on your arm. Other times, a hot iron on the shoulder or the thigh. A small mark that says, "This one is official. It's not for your benefit. It's not for safety or union rights or employment protections. It's so the state can track you like cargo. You're now part of a taxable class. Congratulations. You're legitimate." The irony is rich. The same people who wrinkle their noses at you in public senators, priests, matrons clutching their pearls and their hypocrisy, are part of the system that profits from you in private. They visit your bed in the dark, then vote to raise your taxes at noon. They write speeches about the decay of Roman virtue, then pay your full rate no discount before heading back to the Senate floor. You fund infrastructure. You help build roads, temples, aqueducts. Every whispered moan, every fake laugh, every half-hearted stroke, it all goes toward the water supply. Your misery is municipal revenue. Next time a Roman noble boasts about public works, just smile and nod. You paid for that fountain. The rate's various, of course. Sometimes it's a flat fee per week. Sometimes it's per act. Summer deals get creative, charging more if you're too visible, too loud, too successful. A few even charge based on where you work. Street workers pay one rate. Brothel girls another. Tavern girls. Depends how many cups of wine you serve before sitting down. You try to keep track, but the rules change. They always do. And if you don't pay, they fine you. If you can't pay the fine, they arrest you. And if you're lucky, they let you go after a few days. If you're unlucky, they sell you. Because here's the dirty truth, the Roman legal system has a very convenient side hustle. Still, most of the time, the taxman doesn't need to shout. He just shows up, and you pay. Not because you agree with it, not because you want to, because you don't have a choice. Because being registered, being known, is the only thing that lets you survive with even a sliver of protection. It's the difference between a bribe and a crime. Between tolerated and erased. Between being a person the law can find and one no one bothers to bury. Some girls try to work under the table, or they whisper in alleyways, use back doors, serve clients who prefer discretion over paperwork. They pay no tax. They risk everything. Because if caught, they're treated like smugglers, criminals, moral threats to public decency. The same public that already knows their names and uses them weakly. Rome has no patience for hypocrisy unless it's profitable. And so, most of you pay, you curse, you sigh, you hand over your coins, and when the collector leaves, you whisper a prayer to Libertas, the goddess of freedom. She doesn't answer, but you pray anyway. In the quiet moments when your shift is done, when the lamp is low, when the streets outside go still, you think about it. All this work, all this pretending, all this selling and surviving and painting yourself into a person men want. And you think they don't just want my body, they want the right to tax my shame, to regulate your scent, to measure your breath, to treat your pain as civic contribution. And no matter how tired you are, or how much your back aches, or how many wax tablets hold your name and your rate, you know tomorrow the tax man will return. He always does, and Rome will smile cleaner, wetter, more glorious than before. Paid for with the most ancient currency of all you, they don't pay you to feel anything. They pay you to be there, to be soft, to be pliable, to be beautiful or at least convincingly made up, to be warm, maybe, or cold, if that's what they're into, to be someone who laughs at the right lines, holds a gaze for just long enough, sighs at just the right moment between compliments and climax. But whatever you feel, that's off the clock. No one tips for authenticity. No one ever says, "You seem tired, here's extra for trying." What they pay for is the mask, and you've worn it so long, it has your bone structure. The first skill you learned wasn't how to move. It wasn't how to pose or undress or make moaning sound like music. It was how to laugh on cue, not a real laugh, a carefully timed, surgically crafted, emotionally void chuckle. The kind that tells a man he's charming without actually saying the words. A sound that buys you time, distracts from the smell of his breath or the way his knee is trembling, or the fact that he just called you the wrong name for the third time. Fake laughter is a skill. Not everyone has it. But if you don't learn it fast, you don't last. Men come in with stories, like they're auditioning for affection. They talk about their mothers, their wives, their goats, their gladiator dreams, their insecurities about hairlines, or the politics of toga pleats, or how their sons don't visit anymore. You listen, because no one else does. You sit still while they unravel, peeling their egos off in layers, some sweaty, all loud in the silence that follows. Sometimes they don't even touch you. They just talk, and you become something far worse than an object of desire. You become a therapist for men who don't listen. They tell you things they can't tell anyone else, not because they trust you, but because you're disposable. Your memory doesn't count. You're a vault that never speaks, never repeats, never ruins a reputation, until the next one. Then, you're a different vault for different secrets, and in between you smile, nod, make a soft noise of agreement, or surprise, or pretend understanding, because that's part of the service. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from your body, it comes from your mouth, from how long you've held your jaw just so, how many times you've had to mirror back his expression, how long you've practiced perfectly timed empathy. It's a performance of care, not the real thing, just the shell, the shape of it. Men are trained to recognize kindness not through content, but tone. So you keep your voice low, warm, your inflection slightly upward, like you're always on the edge of interest, always just about to ask a question, always just a breath away from being fascinated by them. You're not, but you make it feel like you are, and that illusion, it's what keeps them coming back. Sometimes the worst ones aren't cruel, they're gentle. That's harder, because you almost start to believe they see you. The way they ask you all right like they mean it. The way they wipe your shoulder after you flinch. The way they linger, not because they want more, but because they don't want to go home. You nod, say something soft, and you feel a flicker of something real. Not affection, but the ghost of it. Like touching a memory someone else once had. But you don't let it grow, because you know better. Real costs more, and no one's paying for that. Your eyes learn to do the heavy lifting. The trick is to keep them focused but soft, interested but vague, alive but not too bright. If your eyes look too real, they scare clients. If they look too dead, they leave early. There's a middle ground, the half-dead gleam. Enough mystery to make him think there's still something left in you to win, but just enough hollowness to signal you're not a threat, not complicated, not someone who might want something in return. Paint helps. The rouge masks the emotional fatigue. The kohl draws attention to the shape of your eyes, not the weight behind them. The scent masks the stale breath of someone who just told you about his promotion, or his brother's funeral, or both in the same sentence. You become a canvas, not for art, for projection. In a better world, you'd get to collapse after each performance, take a bath, eat something warm, stare at a tree, say nothing for an hour, let the nerves recalibrate. But this is Rome. There's no union, no green room, just a damp cloth, a breath of stale air, and the next knock on the door. You touch up your lipstick, pull your shoulders back, switch on your interested face, and open. Later, when it's quiet, you'll sit by the lamp and stare at nothing. Your fingers will twitch, your jaw will ache. Not from work, from pretending not to notice how much work it is. You won't cry. You stopped doing that a long time ago. Not because it hurt less, but because the tears stopped changing anything. Now, when it hurts, you just breathe and start wiping your makeup off, one cheek at a time. The kohl comes off in streaks. The rouge stains your fingertips. You use spit when there's no water left. The woman in the mirror isn't ugly. She's just not there. Not yet. Not until the next morning, when you draw her back on, again line by line, laugh by laugh, until she's ready to do it all over again. You work in the emotional shadows of the empire. No plaque will ever carry your name. No statue will honor your patience. But tonight, some senator will say you're a good listener. Some soldier will call you easy to talk to. Some merchant will wonder aloud if maybe he should have married someone like you. And you'll nod and say, maybe. And when he leaves, you'll sit very still, let the quiet in, and remember they paid for everything but the part of you that hurt the most. There are jobs with open concept offices. There are jobs with cubicles. There are even jobs with corner windows and soft chairs. And then there's your job. Your office is a stone box with a curtain. That's not poetic exaggeration. It's literal. A brothel in Romea Lupina wasn't built for comfort. It was built for function. But even that's too generous. It wasn't even really built for you. It was built for the convenience of men who wanted to buy pleasure without the trouble of remembering your name. And so, every morning, you enter your space, your cell, your corner of Rome's flesh trade. The hallway is narrow, just wide enough for two men to pass each other if one of them turns sideways and the other agrees not to inhale. The walls are stone, cold, always slightly damp. No one knows why. Maybe it's the bathhouse next door. Maybe it's the sweating ghosts of disappointed clients. You don't ask. You just learn to live with it. Along both sides of the corridor are rooms, but calling them rooms is like calling a sneeze a symphony. They're closets, alcoves, stone stalls, no doors, just curtains moth-eaten and see-through in the right light. They flutter when someone walks past like gossip. They don't block anything, not sound, not smell, not shame. You pull yours closed anyway, because pretending it's private is easier than admitting it's not. Inside your workspace, the furniture is minimal. There's a stone bed, built into the wall like a shelf for your humiliation. A thin mattress lies over it, more a suggestion of softness than the real thing. Some women stuff theirs with straw, others with old clothes. You use what's left of a cushion someone gave you 3 years ago. It doesn't help. The bed is always cold. In winter, you lie on it like a fish on a cutting board. In summer, it sweats with you. Sometimes, you can still feel the imprint of the last client, like the stone remembers better than you do. There's a lamp, if you've managed to afford oil. Most nights, you don't bother lighting it. Clients don't pay extra to see your face clearly. There's a bucket in the corner. You learn to ignore the bucket, and a shelf just one where you keep the things that remind you you're still a person. A comb, a worn bit of fabric that used to be a scarf, a bone charm carved by a woman you haven't seen in years. You keep it anyway, because space is tight, but memory is tighter. The walls thin, so thin you know when the girl next door coughs, or cries, or fakes a laugh with such dedication, you almost believe it. The men on the other side of those curtains grunt, moan, shout. Sometimes they sing, sometimes they apologize. One once recited a love poem while adjusting his belt. You still haven't forgiven him? You hear everything. You learn to stop listening. And then there's your Leno, the owner, the manager, the walking insult dressed in borrowed authority. He doesn't live here. He just visits, loudly, usually to check earnings, sometimes to shout about missed opportunities. Once, to warn you that if your attitude doesn't improve, the newer girl 3 doors down might get your shift. You don't argue, because he owns the walls, and if he doesn't like you, you sleep somewhere else tonight, maybe outside, maybe not at all. The brothel itself doesn't smell bad. Not exactly. It smells like breath, and wax, and wine spilled last week and never cleaned because it's soaked into the mattress. And who really cares? It smells like sweat that isn't yours, like linen that never fully dries, like nervousness, like secrets. It's the scent of 100 decisions made in the dark and the women who endured them with grace, gritted teeth, or both. And yet you come back, you open the curtain, you light the lamp, you adjust the cushion, you sit on the stone ledge like it's a chaise, you tuck the comb back into place, you wait. Because what else is there? You tried the tavern, too loud. You tried the streets, too risky. The brothel is, at least, predictable. It has structure. You don't have to chase customers, they come to you. You don't have to pay for protection it's included in the Lenner's cut. You don't have to worry about where you'll sleep. It's here, next to the shelf, next to the bucket, next to the faint scrape of someone else's strigil through the wall. Clients come in, they don't knock, they nod, or grunt, or look at you with the dead eyes of a man who's here to forget something. You let them in, you perform, they leave. Sometimes they tip, sometimes they ask your name, sometimes they try to hold your hand afterward, and you let them, not because it's sweet but because it's short. You wipe the stone down, you fix the curtain, and you sit, again, outside. Rome buzzes, merchants, philosophers, poets debating glory in public squares while their wives sit at home sharpening knives of disappointment. Inside the brothel, just this, curtains, stone, sweat, waiting. It's a maze with no map, and the only thing that changes is the face on the other side of the curtain. You think sometimes about what it would be like to have a job with walls, with doors, with co-workers who aren't crying through a curtain, with a boss who asks how you're doing and waits for the answer, You don't want luxury. Just a chair that doesn't bruise, a room that doesn't echo, a silence that doesn't vibrate with someone else's panting. But in Rome, that's asking too much. Here, your contract is stone, your paycheck is skin, your resignation letter is written in breath. So you stay, you sit, you wait, and when the curtain flutters again, you smile. Because that's the job, that's the brothel, that's your workplace. Not glamorous, not tragic, just small, stone-bound, and somehow still standing. If the brothel is a prison with curtains, the tavern is a circus without a tent. No structure, no rules, just noise, heat, spilled wine, and hands always the hands. You work in a place called a Papina, one of Rome's many food and wine establishments that doubles as a social experiment in how loud, drunk, and unpredictable a room full of men can get before something catches fire. You're not listed on the menu, but everyone knows you're available like salt or shame. Your shift starts early, before the room is full, before the shouting begins, before the vomit hits the floorboards and the gladiator stories start circling like stray dogs. You wipe down the table's wooden planks warped from heat and wine and time. You set out chipped clay cups that smell faintly of vinegar and the last man who used them. You light the oil lamps. You pray they don't explode. Then you go behind the counter. The wine is already prepared. It's watered down. Always watered down. A trick as old as Rome itself. But no one complains. They're not here for the bouquet. They're here to get loud and forget things. You pour. You smile. You deliver it with a laugh and a compliment that sounds sincere if you squint hard enough. Then you do it again and again. It doesn't take long for the place to fill. Soldiers off duty. Merchants between deals. A pair of senators slumming it for the night to feel connected to the people. You greet them all, and you keep track, not of orders, but of risk. Who's already drunk? Who's itching for a fight? Who tips in advance and who forgets to pay altogether? And most importantly, whose hand is creeping too close to your thigh? Working a Roman tavern means juggling 3 jobs at once. You're a waitress, delivering drink with just enough flirtation to keep the cups full. You're a performer, smiling on cue, faking surprise at jokes you've heard 50 times and laughing like it's the first. And you're a barrier between angry men and each other, between drunk men and your body, between the room and complete collapse. You dodge more than you serve. Hands, elbows, wine sloshed over the rim, tongues. Questions that start with how much for just a conversation and end with a hand around your wrist. The food here is worse than the wine. Boiled cabbage is the house specialty. Sometimes it comes with bits of meat. Sometimes it just comes with regret. There's always garum fermented fish sauce that smells like someone bottled sadness and forgot to cork it. The scent sticks to your clothes, your hair, your skin. You go home smelling like failure stew, and no one notices, not even you. Sometimes you're pulled aside for private company. Not official, not paid, not agreed upon. Just a customer who thinks he's subtle when he grabs your elbow and points toward the back room. You go. Because if you say no, hell complain to the owner, a woman who used to work the tables herself and now runs the place like a queen of debt and denial. She'll tell you. Smile more. She'll dock your take. She'll say, it's just a few minutes. It's never just a few minutes. Other times, you're expected to sit on a lap, at a table, on the edge of the bench with 3 men who all want to believe they're the reason you're laughing. You shift your weight carefully. You throw compliments like coins. You pretend someone calling you darling in a voice that could strip paint is endearing. And through it all, you keep one eye on the bouncer. Here's your only HR, a retired gladiator with a bad knee and worse hearing. But he knows how to read a room, and more importantly, he knows how to remove someone from it. You once saw him lift a merchant by the neck and toss him outside like garbage. You've liked him ever since. The tavern doesn't close at a fixed hour. It closes when the customers leave, or when someone throws a table, or when the lamps run out of oil and someone finally admits they can't see the dice anymore. You stay until the end. You mop. You wipe. You collect coins from the floor that may or may not be yours. Sometimes you find a lost earring, sometimes a tooth. You don't ask questions. You just sweep. The side hustle comes when the doors close. Some nights, one of the patrons lingers. Not drunk. Not aggressive. Just lingering. He waits until everyone's gone, then slides 2 denarii across the table and looks at you. Doesn't say anything. He doesn't have to. You blow out the lamps. You follow him to the storeroom, and it's quiet. Not romantic, not violent, just quiet. And after, he says thank you, and leaves. And you sit on a barrel and wonder if that was work, or something adjacent. Then you count the coins and decide it doesn't matter. Tavern work is dirty. Not in the way people think. It's the kind of dirty that sticks in your fingernails. The kind that crawls behind your ears and under your tongue. The kind that leaves you raw not from touch, but from repetition. You wake up the next day with sore cheeks, not from use, but from smiling too hard for too long, and then you do it again. Because coins don't grow on fig trees, and clients don't appear out of thin air, and rent is due, and the brothel is full, and the street corner already has someone younger standing in your old spot. So you pull your hair back, put on the tunic that doesn't smell too bad, and head back to the tavern, to pour wine, to fake flirts, to dodge hands, and to remind yourself yet again that you're not the chaos. You just work inside it. Freedom sounds good on paper. You imagine it like a breeze through a curtain, a job without a boss. Hours that belong to no one but you, no Leno, no tavern owner counting every coin you earn and every breath you take, no shift list, no stone room, just you, your sandals, and the wide Roman streets. But out here independence is a myth, and the Forum, the marble heart of Rome, isn't freedom, it's exposure. You leave the brothel one morning, no more stone beds, no more curtain whispers. You decide to go freelance. Why not? No more 50% cuts. No more rules about what to wear or who gets the next customer. No more competing with 6 other girls for a room that smells like old wine and broken promises. Now, you work the streets, specifically the ones near the Forum, the temple steps, the entrances to bathhouses, and any alley with just enough shadow to keep things deniable. You walk, you wait, you smile, you speak. You make eye contact that walks a tightrope between inviting and non-threatening. You time your posture for maximum effect. Chin up, toga tight, shoulders bare but not too bare, eyes bright but not challenging. Your tunic is bright intentionally, a splash of colour in the city's stone palette. Not elegance, visibility. No one hires what they can't see. The fabric clings to your hips, not by design. It's cheap and threadbare and damp from the mist that rolled in from the Tiber last night. But you make it work. You add a bronze bracelet, a painted earring, a comb in your hair that you polished on your tunic this morning. You've been out here 2 hours, no bites. Just one merchant who looked you over like a fish he didn't like the smell of, and a senator's wife who spat near your feet and said nothing. But her eyes said plenty. You keep walking. Your sandals are the only thing between you and ruin. If they snap, you're limping, and limping women don't get clients. So you tie the straps tighter, check the soles every hour. Not because you care about comfort, but because broken shoes mean you can't run. And out here, you need to run. From thieves, from jealous wives, from drunk men who don't want to pay, from the vigils Rome's night watch, whose job includes arresting people who disturb the moral order. That's code for women who look like you, stand like you, smile like you. Sometimes they take a bribe. Sometimes they take you. You've learned to tell the difference by the way they walk. But the most dangerous aren't the drunk men or the angry guards. It's the philosophers. They find you near the temples, near the columns, near the fountains where people toss coins and wishes and chicken bones. They approach slowly, always with questions. Do you believe in love? Do you think the soul is eternal? Would you sleep with a man who writes poetry about death? They're always quoting Seneca, or Cicero, or someone they made up. Their togas are too clean. Their eyes are too empty. They don't want sex. They want to feel superior while pretending to desire you. You nod, smile, wait. Eventually, they get bored, or they ask how much. And when you tell them, they sigh like you've ruined the conversation. You shift to the temple steps. Venus, Mercury, Fortuna. Irony never ends in this city. You sit quietly, like a woman waiting for prayer, but you're not. You're waiting for someone who believes they can save you. There's always one, the man who wants to rescue you, but only after he's finished with his turn. The kind who whispers, "You don't belong out here," while untying his belt. They leave coins, or promises, or nothing, and you stay. Because the temple doesn't mind, and the gods, they haven't spoken in years. Daylight hours are better. Not because they're safer, just because you can see who's coming. You time your walk between shadows. You keep one eye on your exit routes, one hand on your pouch, one foot pointed toward the bathhouse door, just in case you need to slip inside and pretend you were there for cleansing, not selling. And all the while, you measure men like a butcher eyeing meat, not their faces, their feet. How steady are they? Are they limping drunk wealthy? Do their sandals match their rings? Do they jingle? Do they carry guilt like a cloak? If so, they're yours, for a few minutes, maybe longer. But the forum isn't kind to women like you, even when the money comes, even when someone stops, pays, touches, leaves, because afterward there's no room, no curtain, no place to sit, no time to rest, no wall to lean against that doesn't already belong to someone else. You walk again. You walk through the market where stall owners shout and smoke fills the air, through the colonnade where couples stroll and old women sell love potions, past matrons who glance and glance again, then whisper like they've been infected by your presence. You don't look back. You just walk. The other girls nod when they pass, a silent fraternity of fabric and fatigue. You don't know their names, but you know their shoes, how fast they move, how many hours they've been out, which corner is theirs, who they're watching. You avoid stepping on their territory and they avoid stepping on yours. You nod again. That's as close as you'll get to friendship today. When the sun drops, you stay out longer than you should. The coins weren't good today. You need one more. Just one. But it gets colder and louder and then suddenly quieter. The wrong kind of quiet. You wrap your shawl tighter. You grip the knife hidden in the lining. You check the shadows behind you and you walk faster. You're not afraid. Not exactly. Just aware. That out here, you're not just a worker. You're a target. And the only backup you have is yourself. Later that night, when you finally sit on a step, a stoop, a stone, you count your coins. 3 denarii, 1 as 2 half-eaten figs from a man who forgot he'd already paid you last week, and a line from a philosopher you didn't understand. You stare at the sky. You don't wish. You don't pray. You just sit and tell yourself you're free, even if no one would come if you screamed, even if no one saw you today, even if you disappeared right now and the gods never blinked. You're free. And somehow, that hurts worse than being owned. It's not being used that stings. It's being used and judged at the same time. That's the Roman specialty. They legalize you, regulate you, tax you, and then despise you for existing. You're not illegal. You're worse. You're tolerated. Start with the Senate, that great theatre of wisdom and wrinkles, where men in white togas debate honour while scratching their names into the brothel walls on weekends. They pass laws to register you, to tax you, to brand you if necessary. They've designed the shape of your humiliation down to the inch. But when they speak in public, you're the collapse of Roman virtue. They shake their heads about moral decay. They clutch their scrolls like rosaries. They vote on cleanliness regulations for brothels, and then visit one an hour later for inspection. They hate you, but they keep receipts. You know, because some of those receipts are your name etched in stone outside the lupinar. Some are in poems. Some, let's be honest, are probably tattooed on them. Then come the matrons, respectable wives, the elite, the properly dressed in stolas and judgment. They don't talk to you. They don't have to. They look, and in Rome, that's enough. Their glances are weapons, silent verdicts that slap harder than a guard's baton. You walk past them and feel the air freeze. They clutch their children tighter, pull their togas closed like your skin is contagious. They never speak to you, but they campaign for laws that affect you. They petition for bans on prostitutes entering bathhouses, wearing jewellery, attending public performances. You're allowed to exist. Yes, but not too visibly, not too close, not near their daughters, not near their husbands. Because let's be honest, they know. Every matron in Rome has heard of a dancer her husband once visited. Every matron has watched him come home with perfume on his cloak and excuses in his mouth. They don't hate you because they don't understand you. They hate you because they do. Then there are the writers, poets, satirists, philosophers, men with pens and too much time. They write about you constantly. Lines and lines of verse describing the curve of your waist, the scent of your thighs, The way your eyes blink when the oil lamp flutters. They describe you in detail so intimate. It could only come from memory. And then they mock you. In the next line, they write that you're greedy, loud, unclean. They compare you to dogs, to slaves, to broken wine jugs. They immortalize you and condemn you in the same breath. Juvenal, Martial, Seneca. Men who claim to value stoicism and self-control, while remembering exactly which brothel hallway you were standing in on a Tuesday. They write about your laugh, then write that you have no soul. They record your name for history, then footnote it with a sneer. And generations later, scholars will read those verses and think how immoral she must have been. Not him. You. The priests. They don't care. Not really. As long as you don't sleep with someone too close to the altar, they let it slide. Publicly, they denounce impurity. Privately, they believe Venus can be persuaded. You've seen one offer extra coin to keep his name quiet. You've seen another cry after. You've seen all of them return. Even the publican, the tax collectors judge you, the ones who take your money without blinking. They scribble on their wax tablets with disdain, muttering about the decline of womanhood while calculating exactly how many times you've worked this week. You see it in their posture, their eyebrows, the way they sigh when you hand over your coin, like you're the one inconveniencing them. You want to scream. You profit off me. You take my money. You brand my arm. You record my name in your civic ledger, and you still act like I owe you something more. But you don't. You just nod and lower your eyes, because defiance is expensive in this city. Even the children learn early. They hear the whispers. They pass the jokes. They throw names at you as you walk past not your real one. But words they don't fully understand yet. Looper, harlot, streetwife. You don't flinch. You stopped flinching 3 summers ago. But something inside you folds smaller every time. And when people talk about you at feasts, in the forums, around the kitchen fire, they speak like you're a cautionary tale. She's what happens when a woman strays. She's what happens when a father fails. She's what happens when a city loses its soul. You're a parable, not a person. You're the punchline of stories that always start with desire and end with ruin. Never mind that half the women in the Stola wear musks thicker than yours. Never mind that you've seen wives beg for affection, for attention, for the kind of touch you sell by the quarter hour. They call you dirty, while living in houses scrubbed with the silver you earned, and yet some of them still come to you, in secret, in shame, in silence. Men who preach virtue by day and weep in your arms at night. Men who pretend they love their wives until you call them by name. Men who build empires on the backs of labour they pretend not to notice. They use you, and when they're finished, they discuss your disgrace as if they weren't part of it. That's what stings. Not the physical pain, not the exhaustion, not the stone beds, or the public baths, or the endless scraping of rouge over skin that no longer feels like yours. It's that you're tolerated until you're not, useful until you speak, desirable until you're remembered. They want the moan, not the memory, the body, not the woman. You once dreamed of escape, marriage, a house, a name that wasn't borrowed. But even that is a joke, because if you somehow find a way out, if you fall in love, if someone dares to marry you, you don't become a wife. You become a scandal. Rome doesn't believe in resurrection, not for women like you. So you stay quiet. You smile when they curse you. You nod when they judge you. You serve the man who condemned you from the rostrum this morning. And when he leaves a coin on the ledge, you take it. Because in this city, that coin is the closest thing you'll get to an apology, or acknowledgement, or truth. There's a certain kind of sickness you learn to live with, not the kind you catch on a battlefield, or from bad meat, or swamp water. Now this kind wraps itself around your insides quietly, like ivy climbing a wall you didn't know could rot. It's the kind of sickness no one talks about, not in brothels, not in bathhouses, and certainly not in Senate halls where men vote on your existence between gulps of spiced wine. But every woman in this trade knows it. You don't get sick in Rome. You get cursed, and then you get creative. It usually starts with a smell, a sharp iron tang, like old coins or rusted knives. Then a sting, then a burn, then something worse. By the time you notice the oozing or the itch or the soreness that doesn't go away, you already know someone left more than coins. It could have been the merchant with too much perfume, the soldier who didn't take off his sandals, the boy who cried halfway through and said he'd never done this before. It doesn't matter. The sailor from Brundisium was the last straw. He smelled like salt and stories. But when he left, your body told a different tale. Now every step hurts, and you have no doctor. Rome has no real medicine, not for people like you, no clinics, no ointments with ingredients you can pronounce, no sterile tools, no professionals with white robes and soft voices. What you have is vinegar, applied with a cloth, held between shaking fingers, and if vinegar doesn't work, you pray. You pray to Venus, to Asclepius, to Fortuna. You pray to gods who haven't spoken in years, or ever. You burn incense, you swallow herbs, you try silphium, if you can find it. That miraculous plantance famed across the empire for its power to prevent pregnancy, to cleanse the womb, to ease the pain of what was never supposed to be easy. But silphium is gone now, extinct, over-harvested, used up, consumed faster than Rome could control. You laugh, dryly, whenever someone mentions it. Because nothing captures the Roman mindset better than extinguishing a miracle plant through overuse, than writing poems about how much they miss it. In its absence, you make do. Wool tampons soaked in herbs, crude animal bladders tied off and used as primitive condoms, oil, honey, ash. Whatever someone swore worked for their cousin's lover. Some of it helps, some of it hurts more, but you don't stop, because stopping isn't a luxury. Stopping means no coin, and no coin means no food, and hunger does more damage than any infection. Then there's the opium, not pure, not potent, just enough to take the edge off. You don't smoke it, you chew it, like a prayer that gets stuck in your teeth. It dulls the ache in your thighs, the fire in your belly, the screaming in your joints. It dulls memory too, which is helpful, especially when you think about what came out of you last week, too small to be a child, too formed to be anything else. You didn't tell anyone. You cleaned it up with a wet cloth and stared at the blood like it had insulted you personally. Then you took a breath, dabbed perfume under your chin, and opened the curtain again. Because grief doesn't pay rent. Even the temples offer solutions, not from priests, from dreams. You go to the temple of Asclepius if you're desperate enough. You lie on a mat among other bleeding, sweating, moaning bodies. You drink a broth the colour of disappointment. You sleep, and you hope that while you sleep, the god of healing gives you a vision. That's how it works. No treatment, no medicine, just a dream. If you're lucky, you see a symbol. If you're luckier, you don't wake up worse. Infections are everywhere. There's no antiseptics, no boiling water, and no gloves as no one washes their hands. You get a cut on your thigh. It festers. You tear something inside, it heals wrong. You scratch yourself trying to clean too deep with a sharp stick because the itch was unbearable. You bleed for days. You sweat through the sheets. And still you show up. Because the only thing worse than being diseased in Rome is being broke and diseased. At least if you keep working. You can buy oil. You can buy wine. You can buy silence from the girl 2 doors down who knows what's happening but won't say it out loud. No one checks on you. No one asks. Are you all right? If you faint in the middle of a client, hell, either finish or complain. If you collapse in the bathhouse, someone will drag you outside. If you vomit blood, someone might offer you prayers, but never a healer. Sometimes you hear about girls who found cures, a paste made of fig leaves and garlic, a woman in Suburra who boils lizards and sells the broth for half a denarius, a sea sponge soaked in goat's milk that's said to clean the body from inside. You try them all, because trying is better than waiting. Waiting feels too much like dying, and when all else fails, you just hide it. You smear more rouge on your cheeks to cover the sweat. You sit carefully to hide the limp. You practice smiling without moving your lips too much, because the pain in your jaw is back and spreading. You paint yourself until you look like someone who isn't falling apart, because in this line of work, no one asks for a sick girl. They want mystery. They want perfume and poise, not fevers and discharge and the stench of survival. So you adjust. You breathe shallow. You hope the next one doesn't last too long, and when he finishes, you clean up, you count the coins, and you whisper. Maybe it's getting better, even though you know it's not. It starts the way most things do in your line of work. You feel different, not sick, not yet, just off. Food tastes stranger. The smell of incense at the bathhouse makes you gag. A customer touches your stomach, and your body tenses like it knows something your mind hasn't admitted yet. A few days pass, then a week, then 2, then you know you are pregnant, and now you have a choice to make. But it isn't really a choice. Not one that feels like it belongs to you. Your fingers press against your belly as if you're checking for proof. There's nothing yet. No swell. No movement. No evidence. Just suspicion and fear. Your back aches differently now. Your legs tremble after work, not from exertion, but from imagining the weight that will come. Not just of the child, of the consequences. You stare at the stone bed you sleep on, the one you work on, the one that smells like sweat and candle smoke and salt. There's no room for a cradle. But women do it. You've seen them. You've watched them balance a baby in one arm while negotiating with a client. You've seen infants sleeping in the corners of brothel rooms, wrapped in old linen, rocking to the rhythm of whispered transactions. You've heard them cry between moans. You've seen them ignored, not out of cruelty, but because sometimes you have to choose pick up the baby or pick up the coin. You think about keeping it. You imagine a name, a warm blanket, a moment, just one where someone touches you gently and says, "Congratulations." But then you remember what happened to the last girl who gave birth in the tavern storeroom. She tried to come back to work 3 days later. She bled through her tunic. The Leno screamed at her for bringing shame into the doorway. The baby didn't make it to the next week. You never saw her again. Just the stain on the floor where her cushion used to be. There are foundling homes places where women leave unwanted infants wrapped in rags, placed in baskets, offered like secrets to stone steps and locked doors. Some of these children survive. Some are taken in by temples. Some are adopted by the poor. Some disappear into the system Rome uses to handle things that embarrass it. And some don't last the night. You've passed by those homes before, seen the empty baskets, heard the whispers. Better than the gutter. Better than a slow death. Better than raising a child who will grow up to hate what you had to do to feed them. You also know the other option, the one no one says out loud, the one that comes with herbs and pressure and risk. You've heard of women who used hot stones, of oils forced inside with wooden sticks, of witches in Suburra who charge 1 denarius for a secret and 2 for discretion, of girls who bled out behind bathhouse walls and were scrubbed away by morning. No record, no mourning, just clean floors. You talk to no one. Not yet. You keep working. You pretend. But something shifts inside you, not just the body, but the way you listen. You notice which men pull out and which don't. You listen for words like careful or finished or again. You stop drinking wine. You sleep more. You cry. Just once. When a customer rests his hand on your stomach and says, "You'd make a good mother," he means nothing by it. He's drunk. He leaves you 2 coins and a broken bracelet. But his words stay, long after the coin loses its shine. Eventually, you tell another girl, quietly, after closing, over shared bread and silence. She doesn't react, just nods, then tells you her story, then another's, then another. You realize every woman here has made this choice. Keep, give, end, survive. There is no happy version, only versions where you live longer, and versions where you don't. You dream of a child who smiles, who looks at you without judgment, who doesn't yet understand what work is, or shame, or why their mother only cries when the lamp is out. You imagine teaching them to walk, to run, to never look back. You wake up crying, and then get dressed, because rent is due. The brothel doesn't pause for pregnancy. Neither do clients. They don't want to hear it, they don't want to see it. They either pretend you're not showing or stop hiring you when you do. The Leno notices. He frowns. He starts offering your room to younger girls during high traffic hours. He starts cutting your rate, then your hours, then your food. Then he stops saying anything at all. And you realize the only thing worse than being wanted is becoming invisible. If you choose to keep it, you'll be alone. No father, no husband, no coin for medicine, no time to nurse. You'll work until you can't walk, then beg until you can't stand, and hope the child doesn't get sick, or grow hungry, or ask why there's never enough. And if they survive, they'll inherit your face, your debts, your silence. And one day, they'll stand at the edge of the forum, asking what their mother used to do, and someone will answer, and the answer will hurt. You walk past the foundling home one night, you linger, you don't go in, you keep walking, your body aches, your back is on fire, but you walk, because you're not ready yet, to keep, to give, to end. Not yet. For now, you still have time. Time to pretend you're deciding. Time to smile. To bargain. To take coin from men who think your belly is just a little softer than usual. Time to trace your stomach at night and wonder if you'll love the thing that grows inside, or if you'll come to hate it, or forget it. Like Rome forgets everyone who wasn't born to marble and power. You sit on the edge of the stone bed, cradle your stomach, whisper a name you'll never say out loud again, and then blow out the lamp, because tomorrow will come, and whatever happens next, you'll face it in silence. There are no family portraits on your shelf, no birthday cakes, no linen napkins or memories of your mother humming while brushing your hair. You don't remember when you stopped wanting a family. Maybe it was the first night you were pushed into a room and told, "Be sweet." Maybe it was after the second miscarriage. Maybe it was when you started calling strangers darling because remembering their names took too much space in your chest. But here, in the middle of a room in a brothel with wet stone walls and too many voices, you found something close. Not family, but something. There's a girl 2 rooms down. Her name isn't real. None of your names are. But you call her Livia because it suits the way she walks, like her ankles carry secrets. She hums while applying rouge, sometimes off-key, sometimes the same note again and again, like she's trying to remember a song that only exists in dreams. She offers you her lipstick when yours wears off. The colour is too bright for your skin, but you take it anyway. You share the mirror, one behind the other. You fix each other's hair when the oil gets patchy. You tell her when her kohl is smudged. She tells you when you look like you've cried. No one else notices, but she does. Then there's Marcia, who works the tavern at night and sleeps in your room during the day. She never asks. She just slips into the straw pile when the sunlight hits her shoulder and exhales like she hasn't breathed in years. You tuck the fabric tighter around her legs. She doesn't say thank you. She doesn't have to. She once gave you her last fig without a word. You've been sisters ever since. Your laughs aren't loud. They're quick, covered by hands, stuffed into sleeves, hiding behind curtains, but they're real, and some nights they're the only sound that doesn't feel purchased. Livia tells stories about rich clients who cried after. Marcia mimics a senator's moan so perfectly you drop your cup. You laugh until your stomach cramps. Then it fades. But for a moment, it warmed you more than any coin ever did. You keep secrets for each other. Who's late? Who's bleeding? Who got slapped? Who found a coin under the cushion and lied about where it came from? You don't judge. You nod. You pass herbs in cloth wraps. You hold a wrist while someone whispers into the night, "I don't think I can do this again." You wipe her face. You fetch water. You sit beside her even after she tells you to leave, because tomorrow it might be you, and you hope someone stays. There are no gods here. Not the kind that answer prayers. But sometimes you believe in each other. In the way Marcia holds your hand when your fingers won't stop shaking. In the way Livia sings under her breath when she knows you haven't slept. In the way the older girl no one knows her name places a clean cloth beside your bed when she sees blood on your thighs. Small acts, tiny mercies, more sacred than incense, more lasting than prayer. You share meals too, half a date. A crust of bread softened in water, an olive pulled from a bowl when no one was looking. You chew slowly, together. You don't say much while eating. Words aren't needed. What matters is that someone saved something for you. You once asked Livia if she wanted to leave. She didn't answer, just kept combing her hair and said, "And go where you nodded," because you didn't know either. It's not that you're chained here. It's just that no one waits for you out there. No mother, no husband, no house with windows and a roof that doesn't leak. But here there's a girl who'll lie beside you when the fever hits. A girl who'll press her lips to your forehead and say, "Still breathing." You'd be amazed how much that means. There are fights. Always. Tempers snap. Territory is sacred. Customers overlap. Coins go missing. Words are thrown. Hair is pulled. But by morning, someone is heating water. Someone is brushing knots from your curls. Someone is whispering, "It's all right." Because here, you recover together. No grudge survives too long. Not when the world already throws so much at you. You're too tired to hate each other. You need each other too much. You dream, sometimes, growing old together, of running a house, a place where no one knocks without consent, where the beds are soft and the oil is warm and no one pretends anything they don't feel. You'd hire cooks, gardeners, girls who only smile if they mean it. You'd build something. together. But then you wake. You smell the wax. You hear the footsteps. You adjust your tunic and tell Livia. There's a man waiting. She nods, and you both get up. Later that night, the three of you sit near the back entrance. Marcia picks at her nails. Livia hums again. You lean your head on her shoulder. No one speaks. But in that moment, you realize something strange. You're not loved, but you're known. And in Rome, that's rare. You don't have family, but you have this cold stone, this shared cup, this borrowed blanket, this laugh in the dark, this hand brushing your hair without a word. No gods, no miracles, just girls surviving together. And for tonight, that's enough. Rome is full of gods. They're everywhere, chiseled into buildings, painted on tiles, whispered over bread, and sworn by in brothels just before someone makes a terrible decision. There's a god for doors, a god for sewers, a god for thresholds, and at least 3 different deities who specialize in minor inconveniences, which means, theoretically, there should be a god for you. Someone divine and generous and vaguely maternal, maybe with flowing hair and gold earrings, who watches over women whose lives are measured in candles and coin. But if she exists, she's never made herself known. So you do what most Roman women do. You hedge your bets. You light candles to Venus, goddess of love and beauty and all things soft and desirable. You whisper her name when your mirror lies to you. You leave rose petals near your bed, even if they're half wilted and stolen from the steps of a public altar. You write her name in ash on the wall and kiss it with a cracked lip. You don't expect miracles. You just hope she'll send you a client who isn't sweaty and doesn't smell like cheese. That would be nice. Venus doesn't answer, but the candle flickers sometimes. So you keep lighting it. Then there's Fortuna, goddess of luck, fate, and surprise outcomes. You don't trust her. No one does. You offer her coins anyway. You mumble her name when rolling dice behind the tavern. You touch the hem of your tunic before stepping outside. Not because it brings protection, but because it gives you something to do while waiting for bad luck to find you. Fortuna is capricious. You once watched a girl receive 5 denarii from a man who couldn't make eye contact, then trip over a stone and crack her chin open. Fortuna gives, then takes, then gives again just enough to keep you praying. You don't build her an altar, you just side-eye her every time something goes wrong. Mercury is next, god of commerce, transactions, and the slippery dance between seller and buyer is the closest thing you have to a patron saint. You whisper to him before you fake a smile. You toss a pebble at his statue before entering the bathhouse, just to stay on his good side. You once drew his symbol on the inside of your sandal, so he'd walk with you. He didn't, but your foot stopped hurting that day, so you chalked it up to divine misdirection. And then there are the realists, the women who don't bother with gods. They go to witches. Subura has a fueled women with thick fingers and thicker secrets, who boil herbs and spit into bowls and say things like, "Don't look at the moon tonight." You visit one after a particularly bad week. She lives above a butcher's stall and smells like vinegar and wisdom. She takes one look at you and says, "Ah, you want him gone?" You don't correct her. You pay 2 denarii. She gives you a cursed tablita thin sheet of lead scratched with tiny letters and symbols that look like angry worms. You're told to bury it near the bathhouse where your rival works. You do, not because you believe it'll work, but because believing in something is easier than doing nothing. Besides, it feels good, like flipping off the gods and the system and the man who said your thighs reminded him of his wife. You learn later that curse tablets are everywhere, hidden in walls, tucked under floor tiles, dropped into wells. They're like ancient Yelp reviews. If Yelp had been run by resentful women with access to dead rats and patience. Some are direct. May Claudia lose her beauty. May Gaius go impotent. May Livia's tongue rot in her mouth. Others are poetic. May her lovers forget her. May his name become salt on his own lips. You smile when you read them. Not because they're cruel, but because they're honest. And in a city where every woman lies for survival, honesty feels like magic. You keep a small shrine in your room. It's not fancy, just a broken tile, a burnt candle stub, and a bowl for coins. You call it your altar of possibility. Sometimes you light incense. Other times you just stare at it and pretend someone is listening. You don't expect answers. You gave up on answers 2 winters ago, when your friend died of fever and no god showed up. But you still light the wick, because flame is beautiful, and silence is easier when it smells like jasmine. And then there's Libertas, the goddess of freedom. You don't pray to her often, because her name feels like a joke. But on certain nights when you've made enough to consider stopping for a few days, when your feet ache and your back won't straighten, you whisper to her. You whisper a wish, not for wealth, not even for happiness, just for air, a different kind of breath, one that doesn't carry perfume or desperation or the memory of someone else's voice in your ear. You tell her just for a little while, let me breathe like I'm not for sale. She doesn't respond. But the next morning, your sandal strap doesn't break, and the man who usually talks too much just leaves a coin and walks away. It's not freedom, but it's close. Some nights, you lie in bed and stare at the ceiling. You count the gods you've invoked: Venus, Fortuna, Mercury, Libertas, Asclepius. Once, Mars, in anger. You realize you've prayed more in the last month than most priests do in a lifetime. And still nothing. No visions, no miracles, no warm hand reaching down to say, I see you. And that's when it hits you. Religion in Rome is a contract no one signs, a trade between you and silence, a ledger of hope with no balance sheet. You give, you burn, you whisper, you kneel, and the gods they watch. Maybe. Or maybe they've all gone deaf. Or maybe they never existed to begin with. But still, you light the candle. Still, you whisper the names. Still, you bury the cursed tablets and tie red cords and wear the charm shaped like a crescent moon. Because even unanswered prayers are something to hold. And holding something, anything, is better than falling apart. It always starts the same. He looks at you a little longer than necessary, says your name like it matters, smiles without asking for anything first. You know the rhythm by now, the pacing, the posture, the performance, and still, you let it happen. Not because you believe it, but because sometimes the script feels better than the silence. He brings you grapes once, not the cheap ones, real ones, fat, red, still clinging to the vine. He hands them to you like a gift, like you're someone who receives things, not earns them. You say thank you. He brushes your hand when he lets go. Your stomach turns not from fear, not from attraction, from something in between. You eat one grape, then another, then for exactly 5 minutes, you believe that maybe, just maybe, he sees you. Not the body, not the painted face, not the woman with too many aliases and not enough rest. Just you. Then he calls you the wrong name, and the spell breaks. You laugh, of course, because that's what you do. You turn the crack into comedy. You smooth over the awkwardness like a smudge on a mirror. You pretend you didn't feel anything shift. He doesn't notice. They never do. But you remember. Not out of anger, just note-taking. Another entry in the journal you don't keep. Later he brings you a poem, handwritten, folded, smelling faintly of wine and ambition. It's bad. Truly, the metaphors don't work. The rhythm stumbles. He compares your eyes to 2 coins and your breath to early fog. But you keep it. You fold it neatly. Place it under your mattress. Not because it's beautiful, because it was meant for you, or someone pretending to be you. And sometimes that's enough. You name your cat after him, a little grey thing that slinks around the bathhouse and sometimes sleeps on your pillow. You say his name out loud every time the cat jumps into your lap. Lucius. You whisper. The cat blinks. A week later, you forget which Lucius it was. But the cat stays. It's not always men. Sometimes it's the way a girl touches your hair when brushing it out. Sometimes it's the way a client asks, have you eaten? Sometimes it's silence shared in a hallway while your back aches and neither of you can cry anymore. Affection sneaks in sideways. It avoids the front door. It never introduces itself. It just shows up, in gifts, in glances, in the way someone says, be safe, like they mean it. You catch it. You cradle it. You let it warm your palms like a stolen ember, but you never hold it too tight, because nothing here survives pressure. Once, you kissed a man because you wanted to, not because he paid, not because he asked, because he looked at you with tired eyes and said, you don't have to pretend. You didn't believe him, but the way he said it made something in you give way. You leaned in. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't magical, but it was soft. And for the first time in months, your lips felt like they belonged to you. He never came back. You didn't expect him to. That wasn't the point. The point was you remembered what choosing felt like. You try not to imagine more. Not houses, not rings, not someone waiting up with warm soup and questions about your day. That kind of love isn't written for women like you. Not in this city, maybe not in any. But still in certain nights, when the rain taps soft against the roof and the candle burns just right, you wonder, would anyone miss you? Would someone search for you? Would anyone remember the way you laughed when you were too tired to lie? You hope so, even if you doubt it. A client once told you he loved you. He was drunk. He had just lost a bet. He cried into your lap and said his wife never looked at him the way you did. You stroked his hair. You didn't say anything, because the truth is you didn't love him. But you didn't hate him either. And in your world, that's dangerously close to connection. He came back 3 times, then never again. You heard he died. You don't know how or why, but you lit a candle anyway and whispered his name once, just to see how it felt in your mouth when no one else was listening. You've known love, just not the kind with poetry and balconies and destiny. You've known shared bread, and arms around you after a fever, and girls who gave you their last drop of perfume before your shift. You've known the feeling of someone fixing your hair in silence and it meaning more than any ring ever could. You've known love as a verb, a thing done, not said, a cup filled, a hand held, a secret kept. That counts too, even if no one writes poems about it, especially because no one writes poems about it. Some days, you let yourself want more. You lie awake and imagine a man who sees past the mask, who waits while you take it off, who holds your face gently not to possess, but to remember. You imagine what it would be like to be chosen, not bought, not borrowed, chosen, even for one night, even once. Then you wake up, and the curtain stirs, and you adjust your tunic and your expectations, and you smile, because that's the job, and because hope, however small, is better than nothing, even if it hurts, especially when it does. The day ends the same way it always does, with stillness. No footsteps in the hallway, no laughter from the street, just the faint crackle of the oil lamp beside your bed, and the sound of fabric brushing over skin. You sit, not because you're tired, though you are, but because you need to pause, to breathe, to remember what it feels like to just be. No roles, no names, no noise, just you. And the end of another day. You start by counting, not thoughts, not regrets, just coins. You spill them onto the mattress, one by one, like tiny gods lined up for inspection. 2 bronze, 1 silver, a chipped copper piece with no face, only weight. You run your thumb over the edges, not to admire them, to feel realness. They are the proof, the only thing this day gave you. You count them like someone else might count prayers softly, with hope and a little disbelief. They won't last long. Food, rent, oil, powder, but they are yours. And tonight, they made survival possible. Next comes the mirror, bronze, cloudy, bent at one edge from being dropped during a bad week last year. It doesn't lie, but it doesn't tell the truth, either. Just reflects what it can. You lean forward, study the face beneath the paint. A little red still clings to your cheeks. A dark line still traces your lashes. You reach for the cloth, wet it, begin to wipe away the day. The rouge comes off slowly like regret. You dab gently, careful not to scrub too hard. Skin thins with time, and some parts of you have already worn too thin. The powder clouds into the cloth like dust rising off a forgotten book. The cold takes longer. You drag the damp edge across your eyelid, again and again, until the line is gone and all that's left is a smudge shaped like fatigue. You breathe, then reach for the perfume. It's cheap, vinegar heavy, almost medicinal, not lovely, but familiar. You dab it behind your ears, on your wrists, just enough to replace the scent of someone else's breath with something that smells like you, or at least the version of you you're willing to fall asleep with, the one who still claims this room, even if only for a few quiet hours. You sit back. Let the lamplight glow across your knees. Let the silence stretch, not empty, not dead, just wide, like a plane with no horizon. You stare at the flame. It's unsteady. It flickers, once, then again. as if it's remembering something. You wonder, is it reacting to your breath, to your thoughts, to your heartbeat? Or is it just dancing for no one, like so many things in this life? You think about the day, not in detail. You don't replay every face, every touch. That's too much. You just let the impression of it settle over you, like dust. You remember a laugh, not yours. You remember a man who didn't make eye contact. You remember the girl in the next room humming under her breath. And you remember one moment brief, unremarkable, when you sat down on the floor and thought, I'm still here, and that thought held you. There's comfort in the repetition, the ritual, the chipping away. You lose parts of yourself slowly, but you also rebuild them. In habits, in movements, in the way you brush your hair before bed. Long strokes, from scalp to ends. Like your mother might have done if she'd been someone who stayed. You brush, and with every stroke, something loosens. Maybe sadness, maybe memory, maybe nothing at all. You sit cross-legged on the mattress. The blanket is thin. The pillow smells of smoke and salt. But your back is straight, and your eyes are clear, and the room's small and cracked and lit only by flame feels. For a moment, like it belongs to you, not to clients, not to coins, not to silence, just you. You look at the wall across from you. There's a mark there, a tiny dent in the plaster from when you once threw your sandal in frustration. It's still there, faint, but visible. A private landmark. You smile, barely, but it's real. Outside, the city murmurs, a cart rolling over stones, a distant voice, the bark of a stray dog. Rome never truly sleeps, but you might, soon. After this moment, after this counting, after this remembering, you lie back, turn onto your side, let your fingers rest on the coins beside you, as if touch might make them multiply. You blow gently toward the flame. It flutters, holds on, then dims. You leave it burning, not because you're afraid of the dark, but because a flicker of light feels like a promise. Even if no one's making one, you close your eyes and whisper not a prayer, not a name, just a single word, enough, not because it is, but because it has to be. The lamp is nearly out, just a small orange glow, pulsing at the edge of sleep. It dances along the cracks in the ceiling, along the fraying hem of the curtain, across your hand curled beside your face. You're still awake. Not from fear, not from duty, just from the stillness. And in this moment, you remember you made it. The walls still smell like wine, a blend of old breath, rose oil, crushed olives, and the faint sourness of men who come and go without washing. The room still creaks when the wind leans in. The floor is still hard beneath your mat, and the corner still hosts a leak no one bothers to fix. But tonight, it's quiet. And more than that, you are real. No one said your name today, not the real one. No one thanked you. No one saw you as anything beyond use. But you remained, breathing, moving, existing inside a machine that turns people into services and touches into transactions. You didn't disappear, and for women like you, that alone is its own kind of defiance. You think of the other women in the building. Livia, Marcia, the girl with the laugh like cracked glass. Are they still awake? Counting coins, staring at ceilings, wondering if tomorrow will be different or just more of the same. You hope they're sleeping, not because they're safe, but because sleep is sacred. And tonight, every hour of peace is a revolution. Tomorrow, you'll do it again. You'll wake up and scrub your skin with salt. You'll paint your mouth. You'll smile on cue. You'll listen to the secrets of men who don't know your last name. You'll avoid the Leno. You'll avoid thinking. And you'll earn your bread. Like always. But that's tomorrow. And tonight, you're just a body at rest. No performance. No price tag. No threat of being forgotten. Because in this quiet moment, you remember yourself. You count your fingers. Feel the ache in your spine. Trace the line of your collarbone and wonderedly if your mother had the same. You exhale, not dramatically, not for show, just out. The kind of breath that signals your body might finally sleep. The kind of breath that doesn't have to pretend to be anything more than tired. You remember once hearing a man say that prostitutes are soulless. You almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was lazy. Soulless, if only. If only your soul had left when the bruises came. If only it had packed its things the day the brand was seared into your shoulder. If only it drifted away on a cloud of perfume and silence, like smoke escaping from a broken chimney. But it didn't. It stayed. It watched. It learned how to survive with you. And that's worse, in a way, because it means you feel everything and still go on. A few days ago, a client asked what you would have been in another life. You said, "A baker." He laughed. You smiled. But later, when the room was empty, you found yourself wondering what would it have been like to touch dough instead of men, to wake early and make warmth for other people, to smell like flour instead of sweat and vinegar, to be known for something that made others full. It was a nice thought. It didn't last. But it was nice. There's no closure here, no rescue, no twist ending where someone bursts in to say, "You're free now." Freedom doesn't work like that in Rome. It's not an act of law, it's an act of persistence, a breath taken when no one thought you could, a name whispered into darkness because you remember who you were before the stola was taken, before the toga was forced, before the work began. You close your eyes and say it, not out loud, just in your mind, the name your mother used or the name you lost, or it still fits, barely, but it's yours. Outside, the city breathes, the Tiber stirs, a dog howls once, then stops. Somewhere, a soldier turns over in his sleep, dreaming of wars more honourable than what you fought through today. Let him sleep. He hasn't earned the story you carry. And now, listener, you've heard it. All of it. The curtain, the bed, the coin, the silence, the breath, the survival. And maybe, just maybe, when you lay your head down tonight, something in you will hum with a little more tenderness. Not just for her, but for yourself. For the ways you've kept going. For the days no one thanked you. For the moments no one saw you. And you still did the work. This has been boring history for sleep. And she was never meant to be remembered. But tonight she was. Sleep well. And let the candle burn just a little longer. Not because it chases the dark, but because it honours the day and the fact that you survived it. And sometimes that's enough. If I could speak to you now, not as a symbol, not as history, not as a woman of the night, but simply as a woman who breathed, I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't ask you to remember me. I know how busy forgetting has become. No, I'd ask quieter things, things you might not want to answer, things you might feel in the back of your throat just before sleep. Have you ever sold something you didn't want to admit you owned? Not your body, not your time, but your patience, your softness, your silence. Have you ever smiled because someone expected it, and it was easier than explaining why you didn't feel like it? That's not ancient. That's not Roman. That's just human. They paid me with coins. What do they pay you with? Likes, respect, a chair at a table? What do you give up just to stay invited? When I laughed, they believed me. When I cried, they left early, so I learned. I became a mirror, reflected what they wanted to see. And when they stared into me long enough, they fell in love with themselves, not with me. Does that feel familiar? You're not so different from me. I stood behind a curtain, you sit behind a screen, different fabrics, same function. Somewhere along the way, both of us forgot where the act ends and where the person begins. I was called used, but I ask you now, is exhaustion with a salary more noble than exhaustion with a price? Is faking love in a marriage more virtuous than faking lust in a brothel? You may not sell your body, but maybe you sold your weekends, your voice in meetings, your ability to say no and mean it. Does it feel cleaner or just quieter? There's this idea that shame only lives in dark alleys, but I saw more shame at banquets than I ever did in bed. Men who hated their wives, wives who hated their mirrors, children who hated their futures. They wore silk, they prayed loudly, and they judged me, not because I was worse, but because I was visible. Do you feel seen, not liked, not followed? Seen. When you cry, does anyone hear it from the next room, and do they ask or pretend they didn't? I used to press perfume behind my ears every morning, not for beauty and for armour. If they were going to smell me, I wanted to choose the scent. What do you wear every morning? What mask? What silence? What cost? If I could give you anything, it wouldn't be advice. You already know too much. I'd give you a single moment, a breath, just one, where you don't owe anyone a performance. A minute when no one asks you to be funny or strong or generous or agreeable or correct. Just quiet and whole and yours. I'm not haunting you. I'm not history with a lesson. I'm just a woman who once survived a day, and tomorrow, so will you. Because that, dear listener, that's enough. She's gone now. No one said it. No one had to. Her curtain hasn't moved in 3 days, and in this place, that's the only kind of funeral anyone gets. They cleared her things this morning, quietly, her comb, her scarf, the tiny bowl where she used to keep her coins. The Leno gave her room to someone else by noon. The new girl has a younger face, a louder voice. She hums when she puts on makeup. She doesn't know yet. She will. I found something under the mattress when I changed the sheets. Just a folded bit of paper. Nothing written. Just folded. Held. Hidden. It smelled faintly like the perfume she wore. Not the expensive kind. The kind that burns the throat a little. But it was hers. She wasn't loud. She didn't cry where people could hear. But she listened. She once held my wrist for 10 minutes after a client slapped me. Didn't say anything. Just held it. She once gave me her dinner without explaining why. She once whispered, "Breathe slower. They believe it means you like them." It worked. They'll forget her name. They always do. Not out of cruelty. Out of habit. Because names here fade faster than bruises. And there's always someone younger waiting to take the spot. But I'll remember her, even if I can't say why. Maybe because she reminded me that survival didn't always look like strength. Sometimes it just looked like staying. The cat she used to feed still comes around. It sleeps on the cushion by the wall. No one touches it. Even the new girl avoids it. Maybe it remembers her. Maybe it waits. Some nights, I think I see her, in the mirror, in the shape of a shadow behind a curtain, in the silence that falls after everyone else has gone to sleep. Not a ghost, not a memory. Just the echo of someone who once refused to vanish. They say women like us don't leave legacies, but I've stolen 3 of her tricks. I use them every day. I smile the way she smiled. I walk the way she walked when she wanted to look taller. I paint my mouth with her old rouge, not because I miss her, but because she taught me how to stay alive. So no, she isn't alone. She isn't gone. Not really. She's in the way I braid my hair, in the way I light the candle just enough to see the floor, not enough to be noticed, in the way I say enough when a man forgets his human. She's in me now, and I'm still here, and that, dear listener, is boring history for sleep. Some of them stayed, not long, just long enough to make you forget this was a business. They didn't rush. They didn't reach for their belt first. They sat down, spoke softly, talked about wine, about their sons, about someone they used to be, and for a moment, you forgot how much time had already passed. You always knew how to spot the ones who stayed too long. They didn't look at your body the way the others did. They looked at your face, not with hunger, but with recognition, as if you reminded them of something they lost, or someone they never dared to keep. They brought gifts, not jewelry, not perfume. They brought olives from home, old letters, bread from their sister's kitchen. One man gave you a comb and said, "My wife would never use this colour." You didn't ask what happened to her. You just nodded and tucked the comb under your pillow. They never talked about love, but they talked about leaving, about ships they missed, promotions they didn't take, roads they didn't follow. And always, the question buried under all their words: what would it feel like to stop running? They thought maybe they could find the answer in your room. They didn't, but they kept coming back. One stayed for 3 nights. Not consecutive. Just 3. He never touched you. Just lay beside you. Face up. Hands folded. Breathing like he'd forgotten how to sleep anywhere else. You asked him once, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Hiding." You didn't press. You were hiding too. None of them said goodbye. Not really. They just stopped showing up, one by one, and you never asked where they went, because part of you already knew. They weren't staying for you. They were staying near you the way people sit beside a fire, not because they love it, but because it keeps them warm. And when they're ready, they walk away. You don't hate them. You can't. They gave you quiet moments, bread shared without words, an arm around your waist that didn't mean ownership. but you wonder if they had met you somewhere else, at a market, under daylight, with your hair pinned back and no rouge on your cheeks, would they still have stayed? Or was it the sadness they came for, not the woman? They told you things they couldn't say to anyone else, because you didn't matter, because you wouldn't write them down, because your memory was assumed disposable. But you remember, not their names, but the way their shoulders slumped when they exhaled, the way they looked at your ceiling like it might have held stars, the way they left behind pieces of themselves, scattered like dust on your curtain, your pillow, your breath. Sometimes you think maybe one of them truly saw me, but then you remember none of them ever asked your real name. Not once. And now, dear listener, if you're still awake, if you're still with me, let me ask something quietly. Would you have stayed if you met me then? Would you have stayed the night, stayed longer? And if you had, what would you have stayed for? If you don't know the answer, that's all right. I never did either. Some nights, I imagine one of them coming back. Older now, greyer, softer around the eyes. Not for me, not to start over, just to sit, in silence. Maybe to share bread, or light a lamp, or hold a coin and ask, "Do you still work?" he'd say, "Only when I feel like pretending." Head nod, because he would understand what that means. I don't believe in second chances. Not in this city, not in the stories we're part of. But I do believe in recognition, that strange, flickering pause when two people see each other clearly, not through perfume, or roles, or survival, but through the cracks. The version of me that smiled for money is gone, but the one who waited to be remembered, she's still here, not waiting, just watching. I sometimes wonder if men like him ever think of us again. Not out of guilt, not lust, just memory. A woman lying beside them, not asking for anything. A voice in the dark that didn't need fixing. A name they never said, but still hear sometimes right before sleep. Him not the ghost in the story, in the one who stayed behind when the story moved on. And that's fine. Someone had to sweep the floor. Someone had to remember how it ended. Someone had to be the reason it mattered at all. So sleep now, rest your hands, let the story sink beneath your breath. And if, tomorrow, you pass someone quiet, someone who doesn't look back but doesn't quite disappear either, look again. It might be me. Sometimes I wonder if they remember my room. Not the number, not the layout, just the way the curtain fluttered when they left. The way the lamp burned a little too long that night. The way their name was never spoken, but somehow understood. Not all memories have language. Some just live in the body. Pressure in the chest. A sigh you can't place. A sudden silence when someone says something kind and you're not used to it. If they came back now, decades older, slower, humbler, would I recognize them? Probably not. Time changes everything. Faces, posture, eyes, but not voices. You never forget how someone sounds when they're trying not to cry, especially when they fail. And you, listener, you've made it this far, through coin counting and cheap rouge, through gods who don't answer and girls who do, through taxmen and broken sandals and too many names to remember. And now you're here, quiet, still, breathing, and maybe, just maybe, remembering someone you left too quietly, or someone who left you too gently, or maybe just the version of yourself you used to be. When staying a little longer felt like the bravest thing you could do, sleep now. She forgives you, even if you never stayed, even if you never came, even if all you ever did was listen. My friends, if you're still with me, I want to thank you, taking the time to join me on this journey, to step back into a world that often felt so alien to our own, is something I truly appreciate. We've spent nearly 2 hours breathing the thick, liquidy, smoky air of the Middle Ages, wincing at the thought of a rag dipped in vinegar, and perhaps, for just a moment, feeling a shared phantom itch. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to sit with. And before we go our separate ways, I want us to take a moment to reflect on what this strange, sometimes disgusting, trip through history can teach us. Because history, as I see it, isn't just a collection of dates and names. It's a mirror. It shows us where we've been, so we can better appreciate where we are. It's a lesson in gratitude, a study in resilience, and a reminder of the things that truly matter. Let's dig in, shall we? and find the humanity buried beneath all that dirt. The first and most obvious lesson from our time in the Middle Ages is a profound sense of gratitude for the simple things. We've become so accustomed to the comforts of our modern world that we often forget they are, in fact, luxuries. A hot shower, a flush toilet, a bar of soap that doesn't burn your skin, a bed that isn't teeming with mites. These aren't just conveniences. They are the fruits of centuries of innovation and struggle. Think back to the open door theory, the fear that warm water could open your pores and invite sickness. Imagine living in a world where the very act of trying to get clean was seen as a dangerous gamble. Now, think about your last shower. The steam, the soothing heat, the lather of the soap. It's not just a way to wash away the day's grime. It's an act of pure, unadulterated safety and comfort that our ancestors couldn't have imagined. Or consider the simple act of drinking a glass of water. Our medieval counterparts drank allanot for the taste, but because the water in the wells and rivers was often a swirling cocktail of disease, they had to choose between intoxication and illness. You and I simply turn on a tap. That tap, my friends, is a miracle. It's a silent, constant testament to the work of scientists, engineers, and public health officials who have given us a world where thirst is no longer a matter of life or death. So, the next time you get a cool drink of water, take a moment to be grateful. It's a quiet tribute to every person who chose ale just to make it to the next day. This gratitude extends to our homes, our clothes, and our food. We can buy bread without chewing through stone. We can change our clothes every day, not just every season. We can sleep in a bed that is exclusively ours, without sharing it with strangers or rats. These are not minor details. They are fundamental pillars of a life of dignity and ease. By understanding what life was like without them, we can appreciate the immense privilege we have in simply existing in our own time. The second lesson is perhaps the most humbling, the incredible resilience of the human spirit. It's easy to look back at the Middle Ages and see only misery, but that's a superficial view. Beneath the filth and the fear, people still found ways to be human. They laughed, they loved, they created, and they endured. Remember the communal bathhouses before they were shut down? They were a lukewarm soup of sin. Yes, but they were also places of community. People didn't just go there to wash. They went to talk, to gossip, to eat, and to find a moment of warmth in a cold world. That desire for connection, for shared experience, is something that transcends time and dirt. They found a way to turn a chore into a social event, to find joy in a shared, steamy room, even if it was a bit unsanitary. Think about the tiny acts of vanity and hope we discussed. The girl dabbing her face with a drop of rosewater before market day. The boy with a sprig of thyme tucked into his tunic. These weren't grand gestures. They were small, private acts of rebellion against a world that wanted to wear them down. They were a way of saying, I am still a person, I still care, I still hope. And in those moments, they found a kind of strength that is truly inspiring. They knew their efforts might not make a difference in the grand scheme of things, but they did it anyway. They fought the dirt because it was a way of fighting despair. That fundamental impulse to find beauty and dignity in the face of ugliness is one of the most powerful things about us. Our deep dive into medieval life also reveals a lesson about community. We've become so focused on personal space and privacy that the idea of a shared bed or a public latrine seems horrifying. And yet, for them, it was simply life. Think about the sheer closeness of their existence. Families sleeping in a single room, sharing a bed, a meal, and a fate. It forged a kind of bond that we can hardly comprehend. They knew each other's smells, their sicknesses, their sorrows, and their small victories. This intimacy, while physically uncomfortable, created a dense social fabric. They relied on each other in a way that we rarely do today. A neighbour's cry of "guard low" wasn't just a warning, it was a part of a shared, communal rhythm. In our world, we can choose our social circles and create digital connections across continents. But in the Middle Ages, your community was your world. It was a net that caught you when you fell, and a constant presence that you couldn't escape. There's a powerful lesson in that, a reminder of the enduring human need for belonging. We may have more space and privacy, but we may also have lost a certain closeness that comes from facing hardship together. Finally, let's talk about perspective. We've used the word dirty repeatedly throughout this journey. but we must do so with the understanding that it's a modern judgment. To a person in the Middle Ages, clean wasn't a sterile, scent-free state. It was a matter of managing the chaos. Clean enough meant the smell wasn't overwhelming. It meant the rag wasn't dry. It meant you had a bar of soap, no matter how crude. They weren't ignorant. They were resourceful. They made the best of what they had, using vinegar, herbs, and ash to create a world that, while foreign to us, made perfect sense to them. They were trying, scraping, dabbing, hoping. The dirt was always winning, as we said. But the fact that they kept trying is the real story. This teaches us to be more empathetic, not just to the past, but to each other. It reminds us that our definitions of success, comfort, and cleanliness are not universal truths. They are products of our time, our technology, and our culture. By understanding the why behind their what, we can see them not as dirty, but as survival.